You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot to get to today. Breaking down the Divisional Round of the NFL playoffs, a couple big baseball moves, and I'll break down the two big college basketball games from yesterday. But I gotta start with the NFL and Vikings 49ers. I'll start with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins sorta kinda shed his reputation of not being a money quarterback with his win last week. Now, granted, one game really doesn't mean anything, but if he can beat the Niners in San Francisco, that would shut all the haters up. Now, I like Kirk Cousins. I wanted him on the Jets badly, but whatever. Water under the bridge. I'm fine with Darnold. He's not as good as Cousins, but c'est la vie. The key for the Vikings in this game is going to be them getting all their offensive weapons involved. They've got to get Cook involved early. If they want to spell him with Madison for a little bit, fine. They've got to get Diggs involved early. Diggs last week did not have a big game. He did not get involved a lot. I don't know if that was the plan or not, but he's got to be a big part of this game plan, especially with Thielen. If he plays, which is a big if, he's not going to be at 100%. And Kyle Rudolph, too. Maybe even Irv Smith Jr. The Vikings have to get all their pieces offensively cooking. And when you look at their defense, their secondary is going to need to step up big. They had a good game last week. Yeah, Xavier Rhodes got burned on a couple plays, but overall, he had a really good game. Guys like Anthony Harris, Trey Waynes, Andrew Sendejo, and Harrison Smith, who did not have a good game. We all know how talented Harrison Smith is. He did not have a good game last week. He's got to step up, along with Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, and Everson Griffin. The Vikings need their whole roster clicking to have any chance against the 49ers. But it's not going to happen. There is no way that they beat the 49ers. I understand what they did last week against the Saints. That's what the Vikings fans will point to. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You have a right to point to that. But the Niners are just the far superior team. Jimmy Garoppolo stayed healthy, and he showed what he can do when he plays a full season. Almost threw for 4,000 yards, 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He needs to be the MVP of this game for the Niners to win. Because say what you want about the Niners' backfield, and I understand that week in and week out they've had different guys step up, but it's not going to work that way in the playoffs. You cannot mix and match running backs in the playoffs. I don't trust Matt Breida as far as I can throw him. I don't trust Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Jeff Wilson. I don't know if all those guys are going to play. You know what? I don't care. None of those guys are going to be mistaken for Roger Craig anytime soon. Garoppolo needs to be the best player on the field for the Niners if they're going to win this game. And he'll have help. They'll get George Kittle involved early. Emmanuel Sanders and Deebo Samuel on the outside. That's the one thing you can point to in this game. The Vikings have more weapons offensively than the Niners do. But I really don't think it's going to matter, especially when you factor in the Niners' defense. Arik Armstead and Richard Sherman had fantastic years. I mean, excellent years, sensational years. Nick Bosa, I think, is going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. Dee Ford, Jimmy Ward, DeForest Buckner, really, really good years. I don't think it's going to be a blowout in San Francisco. I think the Vikings will keep it competitive, but I do think the Niners are going to win. Moving over to Titans-Ravens now, and look, it's tough for me to get excited about this game. I understand that the Titans did the impossible. They beat the Patriots in Foxborough, and you cannot take that away from them. That was an insanely impressive win. Having said that, this is the Ravens we're dealing with here. This is a team with the most electric quarterback in NFL history since Michael Vick. This guy is probably more electric than Mahomes. A dominant rushing attack with Jackson, Ingram, and Gus Edwards. Top handcuff back in fantasy football. Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in football. Certainly one of the most underrated. Marquise Brown had a really, really good rookie season. The one thing that bodes well for the Titans is, besides Earl Thomas, they don't have a great playmaker on defense. They have a good defense, they don't have a great defense. This is not the defense of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed anymore. It's a worse defense. That's the one good thing that the Titans have going for them. But I think this game is going to be a romp. I really can't get excited about it. I understand that the Titans pulled off the upset last week, and that's what everyone's going to point to. That's fine. But this is a far superior team to the Patriots. And I think the Ravens are going to run the Titans out of Baltimore. Moving over to Sunday's games now, and Texans-Chiefs. If you love pass-happy offenses, you are going to love this game. Neither one of these teams have a great running game by any stretch, but man alive, do they have two quarterbacks that can throw the ball around. I don't need to extol Watson's and Mahomes' virtues. We all know it. We all know how dominant DeAndre Hopkins is, and Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. Instead, I want to focus on their defense. And let me tell you, when you have two pass-happy offenses like this, that's what the game is going to boil down to. Especially in the playoffs. It's very rare that a playoff game is decided by who's going to have the last possession. Instead, it's usually which defense can go out there and make a big play. And that doesn't bode well for the Texans. They only have one guy that can do that, and that's J.J. Watt. And he did not have a great game, hell, even a good game last week. You can tell he's not 100%. I understand that he wants to be out there for his teammates, and that's commendable. But you're not going to see the J.J. Watt of old in this game. You're going to see a much, much, much less effective J.J. Watt. And when you look at the Chiefs, they've got a few guys who can go out there and make plays. Chris Jones, while he was hurt for a little bit, and he's questionable for this game, all indications are that he's going to play. And it's very likely that he's going to be the best defensive lineman out there. The Honey Badger is another guy who can go out there and make plays. Another guy who I wanted on the Jets badly. He's capable of turning a game on its head. We've seen him do it a million times. And Frank Clark can too. Granted, he hasn't had a great year this year, certainly not worth what the Chiefs gave up for him, but he's a guy who you have to be cognizant of. I don't think this is going to be a blowout, like some people are saying. I do expect the Texans to cover the spread, but I think the Chiefs' defense is going to be able to step up and make more big plays than the Texans' defense. I'm picking the Chiefs. The last game is Seahawks-Packers, and look, you saw it last week. The Seahawks, I don't want to say they're a bad team because they're not, but they're certainly not world beaters. They did not impress me at all last week. They should have blown the Eagles out of the building, especially with Wentz out, but they didn't. Josh McCown had ample opportunities to win that game for the Eagles. Now look, we all know what Russell Wilson is capable of, and I'm not taking anything away from him. Same thing with Marshawn Lynch. Same thing with Tyler Lockett. And they have really good players on defense. Jadeveon Clowney is a great player. I want him on the Jets next year. But he didn't have a good game last week. According to Pro Football Focus, the Seahawks only had 4 players on defense with a grade of 68 or better. Ugo Amadi, Quinton Jefferson, Cody Barton, and Shaquille Griffin. And Amadi only played 14 snaps. Look, the Seahawks have really good players. There's no question about that. But how they performed last week has to concern you. They did not look good against a vastly inferior team. The one good thing that the Seahawks have going for them, besides having Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and Marshawn Lynch, we all know how good those guys are. And Metcalf, too. I almost forgot about Metcalf. I shouldn't have. He was the best player last week for the Seahawks. He's got a really, really bright future. I shouldn't take anything away from what he did. He's going to have a really, really good career, and I expect him to step up this week again. But besides that, the one good thing that the Seahawks have going for him is that the Packers historically have underachieved in the playoffs. I can point to a bunch of years where the Packers should have made the Super Bowl, even won it, and they were eliminated way earlier than they should have been. But this is a different Packers team. This is a team that's been much more aggressive in getting outside talent. Guys like Zadarius Smith, Adrian Amos, and Preston Smith had great years. Maybe Preston Smith didn't have a great year. He had a good year, but certainly Amos and Zadarius Smith did. And when you combine them with Kenny Clark, Darnell Savage, and Kevin King, I love the Packers' defense. I don't need to say anything about Aaron Rodgers. We all know how good he is. Matt LaFleur has breathed new life into him. I expect the Packers to win this game decisively. The Seahawks may have a few good moments, and they'll probably keep it interesting, but it'll never be truly in doubt that the Packers are going to win this game. I don't like going chalk on all 4 games, but I kind of have to here. I just don't see anyone pull in the upset. If I had to pick a team to pull the upset, it would probably be the Texans and Seahawks. Bill O'Brien seems to have learned from his past playoff mistakes. He didn't let the team fold against Buffalo. And if Deshaun Watson can air it out like we all know he can, and if Mahomes struggles, which is very possible, any quarterback can be off on any given day, especially in the playoffs. Guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning have been off in the playoffs before, so it could definitely happen to Mahomes. And if the Seahawks step up, like we all know they can, they're better than how they played last week. If Wilson puts up a vintage Wilson playoff performance, same thing with Marshawn Lynch. DK Metcalf has shown that he doesn't let the bright lights get to him, and Tyler Lockett too. If all those guys step up, the Seahawks can win this game. But I'm going chalk. I hate to say it, but it's true. Moving over to baseball now, and the big Rays-Cardinals trade. I feel like the only way to do this is to attack the 3 guys that were traded that I know. I don't know Edgardo Rodriguez. I've never heard of him, to tell you the truth. So I'll start with Jose Martinez. This is a guy who has had injury concerns in his brief MLB career. He's only played 3 full years, and 2 of them he's gotten hurt. And he's missed substantial time. Now, we all know what he's capable of. Last year was, I don't know if it was an anomaly or a harbinger of things to come. It's very risky with him. He's 31 years old. It's possible that he's just slowing down at this age. That's the thing that I want Rays fans to understand. You didn't get an outfielder in his prime here. You got someone who's probably on, if I'm being generous, the back end of his prime. He doesn't have too many really good years left. Now, he's not a bad player by any stretch. He's probably going to hit 280, maybe 290, 15 homers, 60 ribbies, and he's going to miss some time with injury. That's what you got. Now look, you needed something after losing Garcia and Tommy Pham too. You had to bring in someone, but Jose Martinez isn't going to be a world beater for you. He'll be good, but he won't be great. Arozarena is the guy who you should be excited about. This guy's going to be 25 on opening day, and quite honestly, he reminds me a little bit of Carl Crawford. Can run with the best of them, really good in the field. He'll be really good with the bat. Last year in the PCL, and I understand that it's the PCL, which is a hitter-friendly league, but just to give you some context, he hit .358. There's talent there. You don't do that by accident. I don't know if he's going to get regular playing time. I think if the season started tomorrow, he wouldn't. But we've still got spring training to go through. A million things can happen. Assuming he plays about 150 games, you can expect him to hit 270, 280, 30 steals, and he's going to play a really good outfield for you. But when you look at the Cardinals side of things, this is where the real talent is. Matt Liberatore has all the potential in the world. According to MLB.com, he's the 41st best prospect in baseball. And I'd be hard-pressed to disagree with him. This kid has a great curveball and a really good fastball slider changeup combo, and can control them all really, really well. The sky's the limit for this kid. And now that he's with the Cardinals, a team with as rich a history of developing pitching prospects as any team in baseball, thank God he's out of the AL East. He's still got a little bit of a ways to go before he hits the big leagues. I don't think you'll see him this coming season, but certainly the season after is very possible. The Cardinals got the better talent in this trade, so I'm going to give them the edge here. The other big baseball move is the Diamondbacks locking up David Peralta for 3 more years at $22 million. I'm a big David Peralta fan. Always have been. He helped my fantasy team out a lot last year when healthy. That's the big thing about him. He has a ton of injury concerns. But this contract is more than fair for him. When healthy, he's a guy who can put up 30 home runs easily. He's a guy who you can expect to hit 280, no problem. I think this is a very smart move for the Diamondbacks. And I like the team that they're building. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but they've got the makings of a decent team this year. Moving over to college basketball now, and I'll start with Memphis-Wichita State. Neither team played particularly great in this game. Memphis played worse by far, but Wichita State should have blown them out, and they didn't. They let Memphis hang around. Precious Achiuwa had a double-double. He looked really good, and I love watching him play. And off the bench, Tyler Harris had a big game for him. But the reason that they lost was because they just couldn't get anything going offensively with anyone else. Jeffries had a bad game. Maurice, Ellis, Quinones, Lomax. I'll just rattle through them. This was one of the worst games they've played all year. And to do it when a big chunk of the college basketball world was watching, that's not a good look for him. And for Wichita State, this wasn't a great game either. While both teams played well defensively, I'll grant them that. Both teams played really well defensively. Wichita State should have blown Memphis's doors off. That's how bad they were playing. Wichita State was up by a bunch early. I think they were up by like 14 early. And they had the opportunity to put that game out of reach in the first half. Instead, they let Memphis hang around. They just couldn't make clutch shots or clutch stops. Burton, Stevenson, and Etienne had really good games. There's a lot of talent on that Wichita State team. I didn't think they played great yesterday. They played well enough to get the win, though, which I knew they'd get. But if you're Greg Marshall, I think that there's a lot of stuff to work on here. Namely, stepping on the throat of an opponent when you have them on the ropes. Moving over to Arizona, Oregon, though. And this is why people love Nico Mannion. Because he just has the ability to take over a game. Now, the thing that was interesting about Mannion was, I focused on his passing in the preview. He only had 3 assists. He was the focal point of the offense yesterday. And you know what? I think that was a good decision by Sean Miller. He put up 20 points, 9 for 17 from the field. He should have hit more threes, and he turned the ball over more than I'd like, but Mannion showed why he's a consensus top 10 pick. Zeke Najee had a double-double. He was all over the place making plays. Josh Green looked really good. The thing that you didn't like about this game was that Najee wasn't their second leading scorer. Arizona can't win when Najee isn't scoring as much as he should. All due respect to Josh Green and Dylan Smith, they're tertiary pieces. You don't want them taking over a huge role in the offense. Arizona is built around Mannion and Najee. Everyone else is just there to support them. But make no mistake about it, this was a great game for Arizona. They have absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about here. I think they can go back to Arizona with their heads held high. And there are such things as good losses. Alright, if you're going to lose, it's very rare that you go undefeated in college basketball. If you're going to lose competitively. Don't get blown out. And Arizona was very close to winning this game. where Oregon took control of this game wasn't with their starting backcourt. Pritchard and Duarte, while they played well, they weren't great by any stretch. Pritchard shot less than 33% from the field and shot just a shade over 25% from beyond the arc. He's got to be better than that. Duarte picked up the slack a little bit, but the key to this game for them was Will Richardson. Holy cow, did I hit this on the head. He was the high man for both teams, 21 points. And coming off the bench in college, that's extremely rare. He reminds me so much of Lou Williams, it's not even funny. I love how Dana Altman uses him. Richardson had a great game, and he's the seminal reason why Oregon won. This was a really good win for him. It's going to help them a lot with the committee, and Oregon's going to be a scary team come March. On Monday, I'm going to be breaking down the divisional round of the NFL playoffs and doing a big preview of the CFP national title game. And I'll be doing a special Brooklyn Nets show, the second one ever. There's certainly a lot to talk about with injury news. I hope that you have a good weekend. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that I just won the Nobel Prize of Baseball.